Do you know what it means to be truly loyal? No, not the kind of loyalty that a friend has for his friend or a pet has for its owner, but the kind of loyalty that a Moabite widow had for her Israelite mother-in-law. Welcome to the Bible Project. Our story today is the story of Ruth, a Moabite woman who was married to an Israelite man named Mahlon. They lived in the land of Moab, but when her husband died, she could have easily said, "I'm done. I'm going back to my family," but no, she chose to stay with her mother-in-law, Naomi, and that's what loyalty looks like. So Ruth and Naomi decided to go back to Bethlehem, and because Ruth was a foreigner, she couldn't just go and get a job. She had to glean, that is, she had to gather the leftover grain in the fields after the harvesters were done. And where did she end up gleaning? In the field of Boaz, who was a relative of Naomi's late husband. Now, when Boaz noticed Ruth in his field, he asked his workers, "Hey, who is this girl?" And when he heard that she was a foreigner, who was widowed and was now taking care of her mother-in-law, he said, "Listen guys, I want you to leave some grain for her to glean and don't make things difficult for her, okay? Because she's here in your field." So they all agreed. And then Boaz went over to Ruth and introduced himself. And then he said, "Listen, you just go and glean all you want in my field and go and pick up the grapes in someone else's vineyard. And if you need anything else, just ask anyone here and they'll help you out." So Ruth thanked Boaz and began to glean in the field. And at the end of the day, she ended up with so much grain, more than enough to take care of herself and her mother-in-law. And God saw that Boaz was a righteous and generous man. And God caused him to fall in love with Ruth, and he decided to marry her. And through their marriage, God gave them a son. And that son grew up to become a mighty warrior, King David, the ancestor of Jesus. So, what can we learn from Ruth? Well, first, to be loyal to our family members, even if they're not perfect. Naomi wasn't perfect, but Ruth loved her anyway. And second, to be generous to those in need, whether it's giving them money, food, clothing, or even introducing them to Jesus. Boaz didn't hesitate to help Ruth. He saw a need and he met that need. And third, to trust God with our future, because God takes care of those who trust Him. Ruth trusted God when she decided to stay with Naomi. She didn't know what was gonna happen, but she knew that God would take care of her, and God did. So let's give God all the glory for what He did in the life of Ruth, because without Him, none of this would have happened. This is the host with the Bible Project, and until next time, remember, God loves you.